You know, sometimes life gives you moments that split your heart in two. I still remember that night, the night before my son's wedding, when I heard him say those words that tore through me like glass. "Tomorrow," he said, "she'll finally be gone for good." Gone for good. Do you have any idea what it feels like to hear your child, the same one you carried, loved, and raised, speak like that? I froze outside his door, my hand on the wall, my heart pounding so hard I thought he might hear it. That one sentence changed everything. And before I tell you what happened next, hit that like button and subscribe, because what I discovered after that night still haunts me to this day. You might think you know your own family, but trust me, you don't. The truth? It hides in the silence between words, and that silence was about to destroy mine. The house was quiet that night. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that makes you notice every sound. The clock ticking, the wind outside, your own heartbeat. Everyone was asleep, or at least they were supposed to be. I had gone to check if the wedding gifts were set, making sure everything was perfect for my boy's big day. He'd waited years for this. A new beginning, a wife, a family of his own. But as I passed by his room, I heard him talking. His voice was low, serious, cold, nothing like the gentle tone I'd known my whole life. "Tomorrow," he said again, "she'll finally be gone for good." I stopped breathing. Gone for good? Who was he talking about? His bride? Someone else? Or was it me? You know, at my age you don't eavesdrop for fun. You do it because something inside you screams, "Listen." And I listened. God help me, I did. My first thought was denial. Maybe I misheard. Maybe he was joking. Maybe I was tired. But then, the silence after his voice. No laughter. No response. Just that heavy, chilling quiet that fills a room when something terrible has just been said. And suddenly the walls of my home felt foreign, like I didn't belong there anymore. I wanted to knock, to ask him what he meant, but fear roots you in place. So I stood there, in that dark hallway, clutching the edge of the doorframe like it was the only thing holding me up. I didn't know then that those words would lead me to secrets I wasn't supposed to find. Secrets that would make me question the kind of mother I'd been, and the kind of man my son had become. The night before his wedding, I thought I was about to gain a daughter. But what I was really about to lose was everything I believed in, and it all began with those 7 words. Tomorrow she'll finally be gone for good. I wasn't always the kind of woman who listened through doors. I used to believe that love, especially a mother's love, was enough to keep everything pure and safe. My son Daniel was my whole world. After his father passed, it was just the 2 of us against everything. We built our own little life, one built on trust and laughter and late-night talks over burnt coffee. He was my reason to keep breathing when the house felt too empty. So when he told me he was getting married, I thought maybe this was the moment I'd been waiting for, when all the pain of raising a child alone would finally feel worth it. Her name was Emily. Pretty, polite, always with that soft smile that never quite reached her eyes. The first time we met, I wanted to like her. I really did. She seemed good for him, organized, calm, the kind of woman who made Daniel look at her like she hung the moon. But over time, something in the way she looked at me started to bother me. It wasn't rude exactly, more like she was measuring me. Every conversation felt rehearsed, polite on the surface, but there was a sharp edge underneath, like she was daring me to ask what she really thought. And Daniel? He changed too. He used to call me every day. Then it became once a week. Then only when he needed something. I told myself it was normal. Sons grow up, get busy, fall in love. That's life. But sometimes, when he spoke to me, there was this tone in his voice. A quiet frustration, as if he couldn't wait to hang up. I'd lie awake wondering what I'd done wrong. Maybe I'd held on too tight. Maybe Emily didn't like how close we were. Maybe I was just becoming another obligation. Still, when they started planning the wedding, I did what mothers do. I smiled through the exhaustion, baked cookies for the guests, made lists, and pretended everything was perfect. But beneath that smile, something heavy began to grow. Emily would take over decisions Daniel and I used to make together. The color of the flowers, the guest list, even the seating chart. Every time I offered a suggestion, she'd say, "Oh, that's sweet, but we've already decided. We, not Daniel and me. Not the family. Just her and him." Sometimes I'd catch her whispering with her bridesmaids, and when I entered the room, they'd go silent. She'd flash that practiced smile and say, "Oh, Mrs. Collins, we were just talking about the honeymoon." But their eyes told a different story, the kind that makes your stomach twist for reasons you can't explain. I tried to convince myself I was just being sensitive, a jealous mother, afraid of being replaced. But then, little things started to feel off. A text message on Daniel's phone from an unknown number. "Don't tell her yet." A box in his closet with a photograph torn in half. The way he avoided looking at me when I asked how he was doing. You can feel when something's wrong. You don't need proof. A mother just knows. Still, I kept pretending. I laughed at the jokes, helped arrange flowers, nodded through their plans. But inside, I was beginning to drown in questions. Who was the her he didn't want to tell? What was he hiding from me? And why, every time I looked at Emily, did I feel like she already knew the answers? That's what made that sentence. Tomorrow she'll finally be gone for good. Cut so deep. Because by then, part of me feared I already knew who she was. And worse, that maybe I deserved it. The morning before the wedding felt almost too calm. The kind of calm that comes before a storm. The house smelled like fresh flowers and nervous excitement, but under it all, there was tension. People moved around smiling, talking about table settings and makeup appointments, but I could feel something strange in the air, like the walls themselves were holding their breath. Daniel barely spoke to me that morning. He was polite, distant, busy checking his phone every few minutes. Every time I asked if he'd eaten or needed help, he'd nod without looking up. It wasn't the usual pre-wedding stress. No, this was something colder. His hands trembled a little when he poured his coffee, and once, I caught him staring out the window like he was miles away. I tried to tell myself it was nerves. Every groom gets jittery before the big day. But then I noticed Emily sitting across the room, whispering with her maid of honor. When she looked up and saw me watching, she smiled. A thin, deliberate smile that didn't reach her eyes. Then she leaned closer to the girl next to her and whispered again. They both laughed softly. You know that feeling when you walk into a room and realize you're the topic? That's what it felt like. I busied myself with the decorations. The hall was filled with white roses and gold ribbons. Everyone said it looked beautiful. I kept telling myself, focus on the happiness, not the doubts. But every time Daniel and Emily stood together, their smiles looked rehearsed. And when she reached for his hand, I could swear he hesitated, just for a second. In the afternoon, I overheard one of the groomsmen joking, "Man, Danny's been on edge all week. Hope he doesn't bolt before the vows." Everyone laughed. I didn't. Something about that comment made my stomach tighten. Bolt? Why would he? Unless... No, I pushed the thought away. I was being paranoid. Again. That's what I told myself as I polished the silverware. As if making the forks shine could distract me from the truth clawing at the back of my mind. Later, while checking the seating chart, I noticed a few unfamiliar names. People I didn't recognize. Friends from college, maybe. But one name made me stop. A woman named Clara, sitting near the front. I didn't remember her from any of Daniel's stories. When I asked about her, Emily said, "Oh, just an old friend of his. Nothing important." Her tone was too casual, like she'd rehearsed the line. I nodded. But the question stuck to me like a splinter. As evening fell, the house grew quieter. Guests left for the night, and the caterers packed up. I stood by the window watching the lights flicker outside. My son was getting married tomorrow. I should have been proud. I should have been happy. But all I felt was dread, and then I saw them, Daniel and Emily, standing in the backyard under the fairy lights. From the shadow of the curtain, I watched her grab his arm. Her face wasn't soft or loving. It was angry, desperate. I couldn't hear what she said, but her expression told me enough. He tried to calm her down, looked over his shoulder like he didn't want anyone to see. When she turned away, wiping her eyes, he muttered something that made her freeze. Then she stormed off toward her car. He stayed there for a long time, staring at the ground. When he finally came inside, his face was pale, his jaw tight. I wanted to ask what happened, but the words wouldn't come out. So I just said, "You should get some rest." He nodded, barely meeting my eyes. "Yeah," he said quietly. "Tomorrow, everything changes." It wasn't until he walked up the stairs that I realized. His voice carried the same tone as last night. That same heavy finality. And as I stood there, alone in the dim hallway, one thought kept repeating in my head. Tomorrow, she'll finally be gone for good. That night, the house should have been peaceful. The decorations were done, the food stored, and every room felt heavy with the kind of silence that only comes after too much noise. But I couldn't sleep. No matter how tightly I shut my eyes, my mind kept replaying Daniel's face from earlier, the way his jaw clenched, how his voice dropped when he said, "Tomorrow, everything changes." I told myself I was being foolish. Mothers worry. That's what we do. I should have gone to bed, rested for the big day. But something deep inside me refused to rest. It was that same quiet voice that had whispered to me all my life whenever danger was near. The one that never lied. I made myself some tea and walked through the dim hallway, the kind of walk you take just to prove to yourself everything's fine. The floor creaked under my feet, and the smell of roses from the living room mixed with the faint scent of candle wax. I paused outside Daniel's door, half out of habit, half out of fear. And that's when I heard it again. His voice. Low, tired, serious. I pressed my hand against the wall, trying to make out the words. Yeah. Tomorrow, she'll finally be gone for good. Every muscle in my body froze. The same sentence, the exact same tone. My heart started pounding in my ears. Gone for good. I couldn't tell if he was on the phone or talking to himself. I leaned a little closer, holding my breath. She doesn't deserve this. But it's the only way. My knees nearly gave out. I looked down the hall, half expecting someone to be standing there watching me. But it was just shadows and the dim light from the hallway lamp. The kind that makes everything look colder. Then another voice came through the crack of the door. A man's voice. I couldn't recognize it. It wasn't any of his friends I knew. Deep, calm, and unsettlingly certain. She had her chance, Daniel. After tomorrow, you're free. Free? From what? From who? I backed away slowly, my hand trembling so badly I nearly dropped the teacup. My mind started racing. What if they were planning something? What if he meant Emily? What if he meant me? The thought sent a chill crawling up my spine. I told myself to stop, to walk away. But instead, I found myself stepping closer again, desperate to hear more. Every motherly instinct I had screamed to open that door and demand answers, but something held me back. Fear. The kind that grips your chest and tells you that maybe, just maybe, you don't want to know. The man spoke again, quieter this time. Once it's done, don't look back. Done. The word echoed through my head like a gunshot. I clutched the doorknob, my breath shaking. Part of me wanted to burst in, to yell, to ask what was happening. But I couldn't move. My son's voice, calm, steady, came one last time. "I just hope she doesn't suffer." That was it. I stumbled backward, covering my mouth so I wouldn't scream. The teacup slipped from my hand and shattered on the floor. I froze, waiting. Their voices stopped. A chair scraped inside the room, then silence. A moment later, the door opened. Daniel stepped out, phone in his hand, his eyes half-shadowed by the dim light. When he saw me standing there, his expression changed. Surprise first, then something else. A flicker of guilt, maybe fear. "Mom?" he said, his voice low. "What are you doing up?" I swallowed hard, forcing a smile that didn't belong to me. "I couldn't sleep, just checking on things." He nodded slowly, studying me. "You shouldn't be up this late. Big day tomorrow." His tone was calm. Too calm. I tried to look into his eyes, but they were unreadable. When he walked past me toward his room again, I caught a glimpse of his phone screen. A message flashed before it dimmed. "It's done. Tomorrow at noon." I didn't move for a long time after he shut the door. The pieces of the broken cup sparkled on the floor like tiny mirrors, reflecting my fear back at me. And in that moment, I knew one thing for sure. Something terrible was about to happen tomorrow, and I had no idea how to stop it. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat in the dark, the broken pieces of that teacup swept into a small pile beside me, my mind replaying Daniel's voice over and over again. "She'll finally be gone for good." Those words wouldn't stop echoing. Every possible meaning twisted through my head, darker each time. Gone how? Gone where? And why did it sound like he was planning it? By dawn, I looked like a ghost. Hair messy, eyes swollen, hands trembling from too much coffee and not enough answers. The sun came through the curtains like an unwanted reminder. It was his wedding day. A day that should have been full of joy. But all I felt was dread. Thick and suffocating, I tried to convince myself I'd misunderstood everything. Maybe he meant his ex. Maybe it was some misunderstanding. But that message on his phone, it's done. Tomorrow at noon. Wouldn't let me rest. Noon. The exact time the wedding ceremony was set to begin. So I did something I never imagined I would do to my own son. I started looking for the truth. I went into his room while he was out getting ready. His suit hung neatly on the closet door, his shoes polished, the room too perfect, like he'd already said goodbye to it. I hesitated at first, feeling guilty for even being there. But fear overpowered guilt. I opened the top drawer of his nightstand. Inside, I found a folded piece of paper with a list of names and times scribbled across it. The last line read, "Clara, arrive 11:30. That same name from the guest list. I checked his desk next. Nothing but a few old receipts and a sealed envelope labeled for Emily. I shouldn't have opened it, but I did. Inside was a short letter written in his handwriting. "I'm sorry it had to end like this. You'll understand one day. You deserve peace, even if it means I can't be the one to give it to you." I nearly dropped the letter. My breath caught in my throat. Was this a goodbye note, or something worse? My heart began racing so fast it hurt. I looked at the clock, 10:20 a.m. The ceremony was in less than 2 hours. I grabbed my phone and almost called the police. But then what would I say? That I'd overheard something? That my son might be planning to hurt someone on his wedding day? They'd think I was paranoid. A grieving, overprotective mother losing her mind. I sat on the edge of the bed, tears threatening to spill, when a notification buzzed on his laptop. A message popped up on the screen. I shouldn't have looked, but I couldn't stop myself. It was from that same number. Remember, no hesitation. Noon sharp. No hesitation. Noon sharp. That was it. Panic took over. My body moved before my brain could think. I grabbed my keys, drove to the venue, and parked outside. The air felt heavy, the sky a dull gray that matched the pit in my stomach. Guests were arriving, smiling, laughing, completely unaware of the storm brewing behind those glass doors. I scanned the crowd for Daniel. He wasn't there. But I saw Emily, standing with her bridesmaids, her smile faint but steady. She looked radiant, nervous, unaware. I almost ran to her, almost screamed for her to get out, but I stopped myself. What if I was wrong? What if I ruined everything for nothing? I needed proof, something real, something I could hold. So I waited. When Daniel finally arrived, he looked calm, almost too calm. He greeted people, hugged relatives, smiled for photos. But his eyes, they didn't match the smile. There was something distant there, something cold. And when his phone buzzed, he glanced at it for half a second, slipped it back into his pocket, and whispered something to his best man before walking away. I followed him, quietly, my heart thundering in my ears. He walked down a side hallway that led to the back of the venue, where the staff worked, where no one would notice him. I stayed far enough back to keep out of sight but close enough to hear. He was on the phone again. "It's done," he said softly. "I'm about to tell her." I felt my knees go weak. Tell her what? That he was leaving her? Hurting her? My mind couldn't decide which was worse. He turned suddenly, and I pressed myself against the wall, holding my breath. He walked past, just inches away, not seeing me. I caught a glimpse of his face, his expression blank, emotionless. It wasn't the boy I raised. It was someone else entirely. When he disappeared down the hallway, I exhaled, shaking. Every instinct screamed to run, to stop the wedding, to do something, anything. But what if confronting him too soon made it worse? What if I pushed him over the edge? So I did the only thing left. I started recording. I opened the voice recorder on my phone, ready to catch whatever happened next. If I couldn't stop it, at least I could prove the truth. And as I stood there gripping that phone like a lifeline, I made a silent promise. Whatever happened next, I'd protect my son, even if I had to protect the world from him. I woke up that morning feeling hollow, like my heart had forgotten how to beat right. The house was alive with movement, relatives laughing, florists setting up, photographers calling out for lighting. Everyone was caught up in the joy of the wedding. Everyone, except me. I'd barely slept. Those words, "Tomorrow, she'll finally be gone for good," kept playing over and over in my mind. I tried to convince myself I'd misheard, that maybe he was talking about something else. But when I looked at my son that morning, that same smile, that easy charm, it didn't reach his eyes. It was forced, controlled, almost rehearsed. When I hugged him, he tensed for just a second before relaxing, patting my back. "You okay, Mom?" he asked in that calm voice of his. I nodded. I didn't trust myself to speak. The bride arrived around noon. She looked radiant, nervous but glowing. When she saw me, she hugged me tight, whispering, "Thank you for being here. You've always been like a mother to me." My heart broke right there, because I didn't know what was about to happen, but something told me she wasn't safe. I watched the ceremony unfold, the music, the vows, the laughter. Every moment felt like a countdown. My son held her hands, smiling, but his gaze would flick, just slightly, toward the exit, toward the lake outside. The same lake where he used to fish as a boy, and where he'd been spending late nights recently, saying he needed space. And then came the part that changed everything. Right after they exchanged rings, the officiant paused for a brief moment. Something about a missing signature on a document. My son stepped aside with the wedding planner, visibly annoyed. He whispered something to her, and she nodded, leaving the hall in a hurry. A few minutes later, one of the guests, a close friend of the bride, quietly excused herself to check on something. Within moments, I noticed movement outside the glass doors, 2 people arguing near the lake. I couldn't make out the words, but I recognized the posture, the anger in my son's stance. And then, the bride appeared beside me, confused. "Where's Daniel?" she whispered. I froze. I followed her gaze. He wasn't in the hall anymore. My pulse raced. Something in me snapped. The kind of instinct only a mother knows. I excused myself and followed her outside. The scene was chaos. The wedding planner stood trembling, and my son, my sweet boy, was standing dangerously close to the edge of the dock, shouting. The bride's friend was crying, holding her phone up, recording. When he saw me, his expression changed, from fury to shock to something I can't even describe. "Mom, go inside," he said, his voice shaking. "You don't understand," but I did. The missing signature, the phone calls, the whisper the night before, it all clicked. He wasn't trying to marry her for love. He was trying to make sure she'd never leave alive. She had inherited something, property, money, and he'd planned everything. Before I could react, the bride's friend yelled, "I recorded everything, Daniel." "It's over!" The air went still. My son's face went pale. He looked at me like a trapped animal. "You told her?" he whispered. "I didn't," I said quietly. "But maybe I should have." He took one step toward me, then another. For a moment, I saw that little boy again, the one who used to pick flowers for me, who cried when he broke his toy truck. But that boy was long gone. Police sirens echoed in the distance. Someone must have called them. My son's hands trembled as he turned toward the water, whispering, "I didn't mean for it to go this far." And then he ran, straight into the lake. I screamed. The bride collapsed beside me. The sound of the water swallowing him still haunts me. The ceremony turned into a crime scene. Guests whispered. Cameras flashed. I stood there numb, unable to process what had just happened. Hours later, they pulled him out. He was alive, shaken, broken, crying. He kept repeating, "I just wanted her gone. I wish I could say that was the end of it." But that day changed all of us. My son was taken away, the bride moved out of state, and I was left with one question that still burns in my chest every night. What did I do wrong? And sometimes, when the house is quiet, I hear his voice again. Tomorrow she'll finally be gone for good. Only now, it's not her he's talking about. It's me. The weeks after the wedding felt like years. The house was silent. Not peaceful silent, but heavy silent. The kind that makes you afraid of your own thoughts. Every corner, every photograph, every scent reminded me of him, my son Daniel. My only child, the one I'd spent my whole life protecting. Even from himself, The police came by often at first. They wanted statements, recordings, motives. They told me the bride had given them proof. Phone calls, messages, a hidden audio clip where Daniel had talked about ending it all after the wedding plan was done. His words. His voice. I could hardly believe it. It felt like hearing a stranger who just happened to sound like my son. When they finally charged him, I sat through every minute of that trial. He didn't look at me once. Not when they played the recordings. Not when they showed his search history. Not even when I whispered, "I still love you," as they led him away. I don't think he could face me. Maybe he saw me as part of the reason it all came crashing down. The bride moved far away, started a new life. She sent me a letter once. Kind, gentle, forgiving. She said she didn't blame me for what happened, that she hoped one day Daniel could find peace. I cried for hours after reading it, because deep down, I knew she was the one who truly lost everything. Her safety, her trust, her love. People in town stopped talking to me for a while. Some pitied me. Some whispered that I must have done something wrong, that mothers know, that I should have known. But how do you see a storm coming when you raised it yourself? For months, I kept asking myself the same question. Was he born this way, or did I create him? I think about the way he used to be. Curious, shy, kind. And I think about the night I overheard him. That cold, hollow voice saying, "Tomorrow she'll finally be gone for good." It wasn't just anger. It was detachment. The kind of emptiness that only grows when love is misunderstood, twisted and broken. Sometimes I visit him. The first few times he wouldn't talk, just sat there staring at the wall. But lately he's changed. His voice trembles when he says, "Mom, I wish I could take it all back." And I tell him, "You can't. But you can start again, if you want to." Because I've learned something through all this. Sometimes redemption doesn't look like forgiveness or second chances. Sometimes it's just surviving the truth, facing it, even when it destroys every illusion you ever had about your family, your child, your love. People think stories like mine are about betrayal or evil, but they're really about silence. The things we don't say, the pain we ignore, the darkness we excuse because it's coming from someone we love. Now, every night before bed, I whisper a prayer. Not for things to go back to how they were, but for strength to keep living, to keep forgiving, and to keep remembering the boy Daniel once was before the world, or maybe I, changed him. And if you've listened this far, I want to tell you something. If you ever feel that something is wrong, even if it's just a whisper, a strange glance, a quiet shift in someone's voice, don't ignore it. Because sometimes the thing you don't want to believe is the thing that saves a life. So tonight, as I sit by the window with the moonlight spilling across his empty room, I hear that sentence again. Tomorrow she'll finally be gone for good. But this time, it's different. Because I know, tomorrow it's not her who'll be gone. It's the guilt, the fear, the silence, and maybe that's the beginning of peace.